Coming to you live from the studios of Franciscan University, Steubenville. It's the Ramblin' with Rob show. The show with the DJ who can't stop talking.
As well. And so I had to use a microphone as we gave the little information session during our potluck. And after we were finished talking to the parents, what we did is I kind of held onto the microphone, and as the kids were leaving, I would kind of play around and interview them with the microphone, which had after that point had been turned off. But after a while, after most of the kids had left, I just held onto the microphone, and I just started to ramble and really have a rant on why I no longer worship the God of gridiron, be that Brett Favre or Vince Lombardi or Aaron Rodgers or any other Green Bay Packer that you would want to throw in there, because clearly those in Wisconsin are the greatest offenders of idolatry via the NFL. No, just kidding. But anyways, so yeah, I went on a rant about how I don't worship the God of gridiron, and it just turned into, like, halfway through it, it was like 45 minutes into this rant, I just decided I would have a radio show, and it would be a weekly thing on Wednesday evenings, because this potluck happened to be on a Wednesday evening, and it would be called Ranting with Rob, Ramblin' with Rob, sorry. And then, when I got to school this semester, and I kind of heard it through the grapevine that the radio station was looking for DJs to have an hour slot for a radio show, that right away caught my attention, because I was like, wow, my Ramblin' with Rob during Totus Tuus could become a reality. And then, so I looked into what times they were available, and sure enough, there was a slot on Wednesday evenings. And I was like, wow, this could be actually a weekly thing, like I had joked about as I was rambling during Totus Tuus. This could actually be real. And so, I took the position. Actually, I texted the guy who was running this, and I was like, hey, I see you have some need for DJs. And he's like, oh yeah, we'd love to have you. And I was like, okay, well, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, but thank you very much. I will take this position. And yeah, my goal for this program is to turn it into a talk show, even though this is an FM station and it's supposed to be playing music. I mean, I'm already disappointed in the fact that I can't use Spotify Premium, and I can't even choose. I can't even search for a song. I mean, goodness gracious, I have to choose a song at random. So I'm probably not going to do that, and I'm just going to talk. And tonight, oh, by the way, we have a phone, which is very exciting. And if you want to call in, the number, you might want to write this down. The number is 740-283-6297. That's 740-283-6297. And anyway, so tonight I have a very special topic that I wanted to talk about, which is a discussion on the history of Western philosophy. And I'm joined by a good friend of mine and a great philosopher named Joseph Morel, aka Jomo, because almost every guy on this campus is either named John or Joseph, so we need some distinguishing...
That's right.
Yeah, we need some distinguishing nicknames. And so it fits well that we call him Jomo, and it's very unique. So anyways, I'm joined by Jomo to talk a little bit about...
It's going to be on the air.
And yeah, so we're really excited to be here and discussing some of the philosophy we've been learning. And also, I think it makes a lot of sense. So just to give a little bit of an introduction to even what philosophy is for those of you who are listening, if we even have any listeners at this point. Philosophy it's kind of like a game of chutes and ladders, okay?
That's right. Yeah.
The object of the game is to reach the truth, who is God. And those who get closer to God, those who get closer to the truth, climb up the ladders. While those whose philosophies fail to live up to the truth of reality, they're the ones who go back down the chutes, and their lives often end in despair. or suicide or other nasty things. So, um, unlike science, philosophy is not something that has like developed over time necessarily. I mean, it has developed over time, but that doesn't mean that the most current philosophies are the most truthful philosophies. It's not like science where like our scientific method and our insights have grown over time, and so the science of today is probably the most accurate science that's ever existed. Philosophy is a lot more like literature. Like for example, if I was to write a book today, just because I wrote it today, that doesn't mean that my writing would be better than like William Shakespeare. Literature is one of those things that it's one of those things that it doesn't depend on time. It's a matter of quality, which is outside of time. And the same thing goes for philosophy. It's a matter of seeking the truth, and the truth is timeless. And therefore, just because there's a philosopher in recent times, that doesn't mean his philosophy is as good as those from a long time ago, like the ancient Greeks. And to think that philosophers from modern times have better philosophies than those of old, C.S. Lewis had a phrase for that he called chronological snobbery, and I think that's kind of fitting to think that my philosophy is better than yours just because mine's more recent. That doesn't really hold in philosophy. So, anyways, I wanted to discuss tonight how philosophy has really, in a sense, I would say, really declined from ancient philosophies and those. I would say philosophy reached its point during the Middle Ages, and then from there we see this real decline in man's ability to reach not his ability, but just the philosophers. They just haven't really reached the truth. Well, at this point, not a lot of philosophies or philosophers are concerned about contemplating God. At this point, it's become a lot more like practical and ultimately empty. And
yes, I think the end of it would be the end of philosophy has changed. So,
right.
And we're going to get into that in just a little bit here.
Absolutely, yeah. Before we do that, I'm going to play a song because this is an FM station, and I know I'm supposed to be doing that here and there. So here's a song to play. And again, if you want to call in, our number is 740-283-6297.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ramblin with Rob. So, before we continue our discussion on the history of philosophy, we thought it would be nice if we. This is Joseph Morel, by the way, Rob's guest, Robbie's guest. So we thought it would be good if before we continue our discussion.
You can call me Rob. It's all right.
No. Okay, Rob. We thought we'd introduce ourselves first, since it's Robbie's first episode. So Robbie, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, like maybe where you're from and what you're doing here in Steubenville, Ohio.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. When I first came to Ohio, I thought that all I would see were cornfields and the Ohio State football stadium, and that's what people did. I thought my conception of Midwesterners was they farmed from Sunday, or I should say from Monday to Friday, and then on Saturday they went to watch Ohio State play football, and then on Sunday they went to church, and then they just repeated that, and that was the life of a Midwesterner. And then I came to Steubenville, and I was like, wow, there are no cornfields here, and I kind of wish there were.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
Yeah, but I came here because so my junior year of high school, I had a kind of a deeper conversion, I guess, after my confirmation especially, and as I would go to adoration more, I really felt, at first it was like I came to discover the beauty of marriage, and I wanted to really be able to like prepare myself for my bride, like my future bride, to have a beautiful marriage.
Oh, that's a good goal to have. Wow.
But as I went to adoration more and more, I was like, the Lord was calling me deeper, like towards the priesthood, like really drawing my heart towards that. And so as I was looking at colleges, I wanted to go to a good like Catholic school. And to be honest, the really only good Catholic school I applied to was this school, because I applied other than this school to a bunch of Jesuit schools. Yeah, I mean, I hate to knock them, but it's kind of the truth, honestly. But so I came here, and it was also because I found out about this program we're in called the Priestly Discernment Program, and yeah, it just seemed like a really good fit for me because, again, like as a senior in high school, I was feeling that deeper draw towards the priesthood, but I really didn't feel that comfortable going straight to a seminary.
Yeah.
And so it just was like this program where we were able to come and study theology and philosophy under these great professors at our school, but still have more time to discern where exactly the Lord is calling me to go, whether that be back to our home diocese. I don't know if I mentioned that, from Los Angeles.
Yes, why don't we go ahead and go there? Where are you? Where did you grow up, Robbie?
Yeah. So I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles called Redondo Beach. I was very blessed to grow up there. It was a really beautiful place. My house was 5 minutes away from the beach, and just had some great neighborhood friends growing up, which was really cool. I had some fun stories to share about them. And why not? I'll share one right now. So
sounds good. No, we got plenty of time. Yeah.
Mentally, than 5 minutes.
No, the clock on our wall isn't working.
Oh. Oh yeah, now I see that it's just kind of twitching between 8 and 9, but that second hand is actually not moving. Okay. Anyways, so my friends and I, when I was growing up, had actually a lot of run-ins with the cops because there was no. Apparently, the cops from Redondo Beach had nothing better to do than to,
makes sense.
Yeah, to punish kids for using illegal fireworks. So, when we did some crazy stuff. One of my friends, who was my next door neighbor, he was. I always thought he would be an engineer because he would always just love to make a lot of crazy stuff. Like this one time, he built this lemonade stand. That was like the most extravagant lemonade stand I've ever seen. It had a running sink. Sink. Yeah, like he installed a pump in a sink, and it had like running water. And it was crazy.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, so he was just really really gifted in terms of building stuff like that.
Wow, you must have been. Yeah.
Yeah, so like a couple of stories. One, we were one time. A lot of my friends are not Nerf guns, but airsoft guns. I really didn't care for them very much, but I just joined in because everybody else was doing it. Which, by the way, that's a bad reason to do that. That's a bad
peer pressure.
Yeah.
Like no.
Yeah. But anyway, so we lived across the street from this middle school where you've been, I know, Joe. And there was this big parking lot across the street from our house. So we had this big airsoft fight one time. And leading up to the airsoft fight, it was probably a few months beforehand. I was at my sister Molly. She was playing volleyball in high school at the time, and we were at this dinner. I guess it was like a fundraiser for their volleyball team. And as a part of the dinner, they had like a silent auction. Kind of. It was like you bought raffle tickets, and then you'd be able to like put them in a brown paper bag next to the items that you wanted, and then they would draw one of the tickets out of the bag, and whoever's ticket they drew, they would get to keep that item.
I see. Okay.
And my mom, she gave me like, I don't know, $10 or $15, whatever, to like put tickets in whatever I wanted. One of the things at this auction was this like 3-wheeled trike. I don't know if you've seen one of those, but like people, they swivel the handlebars to make it go or whatever.
Right.
And it was like one of you stand up on it. So so this was one of the things at the auction. At the time, I was like probably 11 years old, and I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So I put all the tickets my mom gave me all in this one brown paper bag. And I remember I looked into the brown paper bag before I put them in. There was like one ticket, maybe, and I put probably like a good 20 tickets in there. And it was like just a few minutes before the drawing was going to happen. So I was like, like, I'm getting this thing, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they drew a ticket, and it was one of my tickets. So I got this 3-wheeled trike, and so it didn't last very long in its original condition. No, it didn't take very long for my next door neighbor, who had all these great ideas, to want to turn it into a army tank.
Trike army tank.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so he kind of applied an idea that he had done with one of his scooters growing up, which is like he drilled a hole through it and put a pillow on top, and we would race down this hill sitting on the pillow. So like we'd put the handlebars from the scooter all the way down, and we'd sit down and like race sitting down on the pillow. But he kind of applied that, so he took this piece of plywood and he put it on the 3-wheeled trike, and then he got like some cardboard, and he covered the trike in cardboard, and we spray painted it camo, so it looked like an army tank. And anyway, so we used this tank in our airsoft fight, and the reason why I remember that is because one of my friends, he had this really powerful airsoft gun. It was like a gas-powered airsoft gun.
Really?
So it would have really hurt if he shot you point blank, which is exactly what happened to me. Because I was in this army tank, and my friend claimed that he didn't think that his airsoft pellets would be able to penetrate the cardboard, especially when he just shot it right next to the cardboard when he was standing right outside the tank. So as I was cruising in this tank at one point, he started firing point blank, and it was a fully automatic gun. So it was like bullets just flying, and it hurt so bad. And after like a screaming from the inside of the tank for like 10 seconds, he finally stopped. So I remember that part of the fight. And then not soon after that, actually I think it was right as I was like getting out of the tank, like, in agony, we heard sirens and flashing lights. And I just booked it. I was like, oh, the cops are here. I ran, and I jumped in the bushes.
Oh my god.
And the cops saw me, and he wagged his finger, like, come over here.
Yeah.
So like I was so afraid. I was like, oh man, like I'm gonna get arrested or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, I know that feeling. Yeah. Well, actually, I've said too much.
Oh yeah, you have a smart.
Oh yeah. Go ahead. Continue.
Anyways, so this cop comes and basically just tells us to stop. I think it was one of our neighbors, whose name shall not be mentioned, who called us in because we had a few different things we did throughout our childhood that, with fireworks illegally, we got the cops called on us, and this airsoft fight, and I can't help but think that it might have been my one neighbor who just kept calling us in, but her name will go unmentioned because I'm not trying to speak badly behind others' back. I'm not trying
That's
to
the right thing to do.
Right. Yes. Yes. But anyways, so that was a long tangent to say that I had some crazy great neighborhood friends growing up. I can tell you some more stories from them later on.
Looking forward to them.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So I'm from LA, and I'm here, possibly discerning to go back to the LA Archdiocese, but also possibly discerning to go to a religious order elsewhere. So yeah, how about you, Joseph? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So like Robbie, I'm also from Southern California, and I also grew up in a suburb of LA. But actually the complete opposite side of Los Angeles. I grew up in Temple City, California, which is near the well-known city of Pasadena, right by the San Gabriel Mission. So the area where I live is called the San Gabriel Valley. Some people know it as the 626. that's our area code. So we like to proudly refer to ourselves as that. But yeah, so I grew up there, Southern California, my whole life. Never really experienced life anywhere else. So when I came to Franciscan University, which is in very very Knott's city, Knott's, LA, Ohio. It really was a big change for me, and it was in a way it's sort of I'm sure Robbie and I have discussed this before, and it's a big what should I call it? There's a sort of enlightenment that happens when you go from a big city like LA to a small town in Ohio, and you realize that the United States is very different from California, especially Southern California. But so that was so you could say that some scales fell from my eyes when I came here to Steubenville.
Yeah, I know the first time I realized that I wasn't within walking distance of a Chinese restaurant. Actually, that's not true. Of a Chick-fil-A, I'll say, or an In-N-Out. I was like, wow, I can't. What am I gonna do?
Oh yeah.
But
no, yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, that's my story. I mean, that's where we're out of time here. So we have to start talking about philosophy.
Yeah,
that's enough about me.
Sure.
Maybe I'll tell my story a bit more.
Yeah,
the next time I'm invited.
Definitely. Which
on the show.
Open invite.
Okay.
except for October 10th. I'm booked that night. We'll be talking about monasticism with my good roommate Matthew Krause.
All right. Okay. Oh, Krause. That'll be fun.
Yes.
I know Matt.
Yeah. So.
So save the date. Save the date, guys.
Yeah.
October 10th.
October 10th. Yeah. Be here on the air or
88.3
square. Yeah. Okay. Now, Jomo, can you tell me what was the Platonic, meaning Plato, or Aristotelian, meaning Aristotle? These guys who were the product of the thought of Socrates in about 300 BC in ancient Greece. What was their conception of the nature of man? And what was their conception of how man can like come to know things? Was it just like through hard work, or like was there some other aspect to man's knowledge?
Right. So we've actually in our contemporary philosophy class with none other than Dr. Plato.
We have been learning philosophy from Plato himself.
Yes, no, that's true. No, we actually do have, his name is Dr. Alex Plato. He's an excellent professor. All you students out there should definitely take him. But anyway, so in our class, we are reading this book by Joseph Pieper. It's called Leisure: The Basis of Culture. And actually, in that codex, in the book, in the second half of it, there's a separate separate book. It's called The Philosophical Act, and he talks about just philosophy in general, like what is it, and kind of what, how have we got to this point in the history of philosophy, and sort of what initiated it, and like kind of like what led up to this point. So he talks about what are some common characteristics of the traditional Western. Another name for it is scholastic philosophers, and so one of the things that he notes in his book is that it's in the Platonic Aristotelian tradition. They've acknowledged this notion of man as having a spirit, and so man is a spiritual being, which sets him apart from the rest of being, from the rest of animals and plants, other creatures, living and non-living. And spirit gives man the capacity to know, the capacity to know things outside of himself, outside of his mind, things external to him. So he can think about, he can contemplate, he can observe and form judgments about those things, and through those judgments, through his this capacity to know, he can come into contact with the truth. So there was no doubt as about whether man could know things external to him. There was no doubt that man could know metaphysical realities, that he could come to know the fact that God exists. And in fact, Aristotle spent much of his time, he dedicated a lot of his philosophy to trying to deduct, trying to discover through logic, through reasoning, whether you come to know God. And so in the West, this old Western tradition, because of man's capacity, because of man's having a spirit, which comes with it rational thought, he can come to know. He comes to know God, that God exists. He come to know the essence of things, and yeah. So sorry that was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was good. Yeah, just to kind of rephrase it and add a little bit here and there. Yeah, so man is unlike animals. Animals, they don't have the capacity to transcend their environments. So like they can interact to a certain degree with, like with the things around them. For example, like when my dad and I go fishing down in Mexican waters, there's a fish called the mahi or dorado, is the name for it in Spanish. And these fish, they actually mate for life. So it's really sad because when you catch one of them, its mate swims up next to the boat because it's like you're killing its spouse, basically.
Oh, wow.
Call that. But then it also provides
yeah.
a good opportunity to catch the other fish too, which works out for the fishermen. So yeah, animals have that capacity to know individual things outside of them, like individual, and to know. I mean, that I don't really mean that literally, but like they have the capacity to at least recognize. I would say individual, like exactly like a mahi,
yeah,
who can recognize their spouse or whatever, their partner.
I think what Joseph Pieper would say, what he says in his book, is that animals are limited. They're kind of like imprisoned in their own world, as he calls it, which would include all just their biological inclinations, and so they'd be limited to their biological inclinations as to like what they're receptive to, what they're capable of, and so they can't really see or transcend beyond that environment, beyond that world that their instincts limit themselves to.
Right. Yeah. So as human beings, we have a rational soul, which separates us from animals, and so we have the ability to, because we have like the spiritual part of us, this truly infinite soul, the capacity to have life everlasting with our soul. We have the capacity to then know the totality of being. So not just the material things, because obviously we can know like animals or plants, or even down to like rocks, which is like the lowest being of all. It's just material, and there's no life to the rocks at all. But we can also know angels and God. And just one quick note is like angels, their existence is actually rather I would say reasonable, because we see within the material world like a hierarchy of material beings. So like yeah, from rocks to plants, and then to animals, which have some sense of like some animating factor to them, I guess. Not a fully rational soul, but then with man we see a rational soul with intellect and will. But then it makes sense that there would be some being that, if man is both body and soul, it would make sense that there could be some higher being than us that has like their pure spirit, and they have so like even an even greater intellect than we do, and obviously a greater will than we do. But that's not quite God, not at that level. And so it makes sense that there could be these beings between us and God. And in fact, our Christian revelation has expressed that to us, that yes, these angels do exist. And as men, we have the capacity to have relations with the entire reality of being, everything down from rocks, to plants, to animals, to angels, and to God, because we have this spiritual sense about us.
Yeah, something that I remember Dr. Donald Ashey was talking about in our theology of the body class was something that makes the human person so incredibly unique and special, if you will, is that we can actually, in one person, can fit the entire world inside his mind. So man is part of the capacity of man as a spiritual being is that he's capable of knowing anything that could possibly be known. So I mean, if you think about that practically, and there it doesn't seem like there could ever be an instance of it, but if you think about it, it is theoretically possible that man can actually fit the entire world in his mind, and that's something unique to the human person that no other creature can do. So I just thought I'd throw that right there.
So, Joe, tell me, like, what happened? So, as we move into, I mean, I would say that the scholastics, so like the medieval philosophers, they definitely maintain the sense of the spirituality of man and his ability to know the fullness of being, both angels and God, and like I said, animals and so forth. But then we see with modern philosophers, especially starting with a guy like Descartes or
Yes.
Bacon or Kant, any of these guys, what happened? I mean,
Right. Yeah,
what became of the notion of who we are as men, and how we lost our dignity based off of their philosophies.
Yeah. So I think before I go into the events of like Descartes, Kant, and Enlightenment, I'll just briefly touch upon, I guess, sort of more of what the attitude of the philosophers were in the scholastic Western tradition. So it was there was this notion in old Western philosophy that philosophy was motivated by wonder, and that philosophy didn't really have any purpose beyond that, beyond fulfilling that desire to know, and that's something that Plato, the ancient Greeks recognized, is that all men, and you could be a theist or an atheist or anyone, but I think that's something that most people can agree upon, that all men desire to know just naturally, have a desire to fill their mind with truth, and so that's motivated by, and that desire manifests in this this wonder, and part of that is of this notion of wonder is, so okay. I guess what I want to go into really really briefly is there. Joseph Pieper talks about um, basically two different components of philosophy: the ratio and intellectus. And so, in the ratio element of philosophy, this is the part of philosophy which is discursive knowledge and logic and sorry, Rob, we're gonna.
Yeah, just like I was going to say, like the ratio is like working hard, basically, for
Yes.
what you come
Yeah.
to know. It's like,
Right. So working, like really working for the truth, working to know. I guess an example would be like working through a very difficult, complicated math problem in calculus. It's like it's really very deliberate, intentional action of seeking to know, seeking the truth. But then there's this other component of philosophy that Joseph Pieper talks about, and it's called the intellectus. And what this is, it's a more contemplative, I guess, passive, if you will, part of philosophy where man doesn't necessarily, he doesn't have to think super hard to seek the truth, but he can just contemplate it and just restfully think about the nature of the world, the nature of himself, and the fundamental questions of being. And so Western, in the old Western tradition, they recognize these two different parts of philosophy, ratio and intellectus, and that they went hand in hand. And so in the Enlightenment, we see a huge change with the attitude regarding these two components.
you mean the Endarkenment?
The yes, the endarkment. Who was it? It was Dr. Bergsma, right? So for all you students out there who know Dr. Bergsma, who teaches Principles of Biblical Studies 1, he was we were talking about different. We were talking about what was it, Robbie?
Well, we're talking about the different biblical scholarship that's happened within the last few hundred years.
Right, yeah,
And like the J source and the Q source, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I forgot the actual name.
Right, and so these different methods of studying the Bible kind of like emerged in the Enlightenment, and Dr. Bergsma, of course, was like, it's like, no, it should be called the Endarkenment,
Yeah.
you know, and so.
Yeah, and so basically during this time there was a breakdown of authority in the church because there was the Protestant Reformation happening. That was, Martin Luther in 1517. And at the same time there was the rise of the modern like scientific method. So there's a lot of new modern science discoveries happening. And so that kind of created this perfect environment for a guy like Kant, his philosophy, to really be like, I would say, like the breaking point to where the whole notion of man changed. Like, so the authority of the church and the authority of God kind of got thrown out. Kant basically thought that we as men were not as fallen as Christianity would make it seem like we are. We don't really need help from on high. Our reason alone, he would say, with enough hard work, can lead us into the future, can get us to the truth. So basically what Kant does is he throws out the intellectus, he throws out the contemplative, the spiritual aspect of man that everybody up to the medieval philosophers had widely accepted and recognized as the highest part of man. But Kant gets rid of that, and he says that we don't even need that. All we need is hard work. And that alone can get us to where we need to go, basically, which he didn't say.
Right. He thinks that philosophy, that the desire for truth, it's not motivated by wonder or man's natural desire to know. It's just if you want truth, then you're going to have to work very hard for it intellectually.
Yeah, and with the rise of modern science, like these modern philosophers, they didn't see philosophy as a good in itself, like the truths as good in themselves.
Right.
It was a turn to where it had to be practical. Everything had to be for a practical purpose now. And so you lose this contemplative aspect of man. You lose this part of man that's just like is able to step back from his work and
Right.
truly have like contemplation and like worship
Right.
of God. Um,
Yeah, truth for the sake of truth.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, with Kant's idea of like the ratio, this discursive intellect of man alone, it strips away the dignity of man as being made in the image and likeness of God, and it turns man into a worker. Basically, man needs to work for everything in order to achieve whatever his end is in life. It needs to include work, hard work. Um, and so basically, this you really see this transition into the 19th and 20th centuries where man is no longer thought of as a spiritual being, and he's no longer thought of as a being who has the capacity to bring God into himself and contemplate God. He becomes only a worker. And so, for example, like in a guy like John Stuart Mill, who himself, his dad, like really schooled him really hard. By the time he was like 3 years old, his dad was teaching him ancient Greek, and by the time he was 12, he was reading Plato and these guys in the original language. And so, basically, his dad never gave him a taste of. He never gave him a break because he didn't want him to become lazy. But that was all. It was actually really ironic because it turned him into like this purely like thinking machine. And the thing that saved him from committing suicide was actually reading poetry, reading Wordsworth, which kind of brought him back to the beauty, I guess, of nature. And I guess, in a sense, gave him a taste of that contemplation that comes from the spiritual side of man. And so, yeah, did you want to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think. Yeah. I think. Yeah. What we see in John Stuart Mill is the consequences of this attitude that Kant brought into philosophy. That philosophy. Well, it was Kant and also I think Descartes and some of the other philosophers. I'm trying to remember.
Karl Marx was big. I mean,
yes. Yeah. But.
Man,
right. So this notion that philosophy is just it's just there for a practical purpose. It's not there. It's not. It's not seeking truth just to know truth. Like the ancients and the scholastic Western philosophers thought. I mean, they thought that it was a worthy. It was a. They thought that seeking truth just to know truth was a worthy pursuit. But when Kant came along and with the Enlightenment, that attitude completely changed, and so philosophy it sort of became a utilitarian tool, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Karl Marx, he has this thing where he says like, philosophy up to this point has been men thinking about the world, but the point is to change the world, which is not at all what the ancients or the scholastics believe. But he certainly did that in terms of his ideal of socialism. And what I want to touch on is how man, he becomes really drained and he loses his lack of meaning in life when he sees everything from the perspective of work, and specifically how Pieper talks about leisure being the basis of culture, which is this kind of, you can think of it in terms of like a petri dish, like cultivating life in a petri dish. Culture is this thing that cultivates the human spirit and is able to lift it up. But man completely loses that because when he sees everything from the perspective of work and practicality, then even the times when he steps back from his work is really just that. It's rest from work in order to be refreshed to work. But in reality, what contemplation is, it's something that's altogether on a different plane from working. It's stepping back and enjoying the higher and better things in life for their own sake, and not just being practical about everything, but enjoying the highest goods because they're simply good to behold.
right, absolutely.
Yeah, people do that.
Oh yeah, so I guess I would just say that Joseph Pieper in his book addresses this, and this was like a major theme in our contemporary philosophy class with Dr. Plato. And so we're happy to share what we're learning with you guys. But But anyway, so in his book Leisure: The Basis of Culture, he wants to address this problem because he saw in the 19 I believe it was in the 1940s, the early sort of early mid 20th century, that this is becoming a problem. This idea that man is just good for work, or time is only worthwhile when it is spent, when it is useful, when it is spent working, and time off from work is only useful insofar as it replenishes you in order to work. And so man is just reduced to proletarian, as this Marx would say.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, so leisure is this really spiritual state where you're able to be at peace with yourself, and then you're able to enter into that rest and that true contemplation and the true ability to look beyond yourself and see the higher goods. But the opposite of that is really sloth, actually, which is interesting, like idleness.
Right.
And it's really what that comes from is it's people not being willing to be at peace with who they are, because they haven't embraced God, basically, is the reason. I mean, I feel like, personally, the only way you're able to be at peace with yourself is by realizing that you're a son or daughter of God. And therefore, when man doesn't have that peace with himself, then he's not able to, like, go beyond himself. He's not able to, have that true inner peace to be able to enter into contemplation. And so, therefore, he like, seeks to do things. He's really busy. And even in, like, so, for example, like, if he watches TV all the time, that could be in some way considered leisure, but in reality, it's really not leisure. It's really just draining him spiritually. And in order to really have that true time of rest and contemplation, he needs to be in relationship with God. So it starts with divine worship, and then he can truly step back from his work and enter into that higher good of life. Because ultimately, if your life is only centered about, working and resting from work in order to go back to work, then you're missing out on the highest goods that life, what we're really created for as men, made by God, is for a relationship with Him. So unfortunately, we're out of time because I'd love to continue talking about that. But just to leave our audience tonight with the idea of, stepping away from your work in order to enjoy the higher goods of having a relationship with God and
just being who you were made to be as a human person. And I guess just one quick bit of advice I would say is to try to enter into this attitude of leisure, of stepping back from the world of work and entering into contemplation. And Pieper's notion of leisure is to find something beautiful to contemplate. That could be nature, that can be works of art. I guess I'll just leave you with that. That's something that can really help you enter into this attitude of leisure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is beauty.
Yeah,
so.
Contemplating leisure, contemplating nature, and sitting with the scriptures or something is a really great way to do it.
Right, absolutely.
All right, well, thank you everybody for listening. It was a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Oh, yes.